Can I start? Okay. Hello, everyone. The idea of the talk today is talk about JavaScript, the evolution of JavaScript, the journey from its early days to the present and beyond. So let's start on this journey. First, a bit just about myself. Probably most of you don't know me. So I'm Ana Rita Sousa. That is a bit about myself. I started work as a software engineer, as a full stack developer, using several languages, platforms, libraries. Then in my last years as a software engineer, I work with full stack development in Node.js and as well in jQuery, React. Then I became a senior front-end engineer, and then I start my path as a manager. Yeah, but the latest years I work a lot with JavaScript. Okay, so before starting talking about JavaScript, I think it's interesting to analyze this picture because it's also show that JavaScript is really related about the web history, right? So they are kind of coupled. When Google Chrome made 3 years, there was a presentation and it was showed these infographics to show the idea was to present the history of the internet, that at that time it's not internet, of web, that time was made 22 years, and as well the contribution of Chrome to the community, and it's quite obvious, as you can see. Yeah, and you see that all over the years, at least this was the first in 22, you see a lot of things that happen with the technologies, with the new browsers, with the web. So on this evolution of JavaScript, we can also see what's happened with the web, what's happened with technologies, and what's happened with JavaScript. Okay, first era of the web. I think probably most of you don't know this, never saw this kind of websites, but at the beginning, before in the first era of the web, most of the websites were read-only, right? So most of the information was static, was possible to search, but not much more than that. That was before in the 19th era, around that. If you remember the previous picture, you also saw that a lot of browsers were created. Was kind of, do you remember or do you already heard about .com bubble? Or?
Yeah, the name is familiar.
Yeah, so, because at that time was created a lot of companies. Amazon, Google were created at that time. Yahoo were created at that time. So there was an explosion of things in the internet. Of course, the websites were like this, but for the time was a new thing, right? Yeah, so here were the first browsers. So the first one was Mosaic, and then the founders of Mosaic moved on to the Netscape, then Opera, then Internet Explorer. But you can see a lot of technologies were created more or less at the same time. It was an explosion of new things that were created at the beginning. That is the area of .com boom, right? A lot of things happened in the 90s. So, and that is the origin of JavaScript, when a lot of things happen. So JavaScript was initially created with the name of Mocha, and then they renamed it for LiveScript. They was created by Brendan Hike. It was hired by Netscape. He created in 10 days, apparently. That's what the rumors saying. And the purpose of that was just give some interactivity to HTML that at the time was pretty static. And being a very lightweight program languages. However, after that, Netscape made an agreement with Java, and the idea was to use Java for large-scale building blocks, like for enterprise applications, and JavaScript for the small scripts, and using like a glue. So that is the idea. I'm not sure if I can reproduce that video, but probably I can do here. Let's see, because this is a video. So that's the first scripts of JavaScript. So as you can see, we are pretty basic comparing to these times, but is how it was born. That was the purpose of the initial purpose of JavaScript, bring some interaction to the browsers. Okay, I think you can move on. But At the same time, more or less, Microsoft used the same languages, but in Microsoft platforms, they call it JavaScript, and start to use it in Internet Explorer 3. So Netscape decided to standardize JavaScript and ask ECMA International to host this standard. But since Java was a trademark already used by Sun, they need to change the name of the standard and call it ECMAScript. So, and it was the first versions of ECMAScript that created, the 1 and 2. After that, the third version came with the first big changes. And probably you'll see JavaScript more similar as you see today, right? So with try-catch, with some blocks like the while, with some function arrays, with some strings. So this was the first big changes of JavaScript. A bit different from that script that was created in that language that was created in 10 days. And at this time, this ECMAScript was supported by all the browsers that exist at the time in the market. Yeah, but new era came, right? After that, in the new millennium, new websites start to appear. Was allowed not just to read only information, but write and publish information. So it's the new era of web. But as well, as you can see, despite that, during these years, the first years of the millennium, you don't see much more technology being created. So it's quite different from the first ages of the web, right? So not much thing happened. Of course, we have two players there in terms of browsers, but not much more than this. And why? As well, about ECMAScript, nothing happens between those 10 years. So, and the following version of ECMAScript was not created. There was no consensus between the major players in the market for about the next version. Some of them says that were much complex, that were not possible to implement. But let's try to understand what was the real reason. Not just JavaScript was paused. As well, CSS, HTML didn't evolve so much. And what happened? So at this time, Microsoft have new plans. So they are about to release a platform, a new, as you call it, .NET framework that has a version of the JavaScript, call it JavaScript.NET, with a bit more functionalities. And the idea is that they can use their own framework for creating applications. So they want to create their proprietary software, so the people can buy their framework and build websites. The same as Macromedia, the company that was behind Flash. So they also start to create a platform to building websites with a lot of animation, with a lot of interactivity, but using ActionScript. So during this area, that was governed by this kind of proprietary software. And there is another thing. Also in these 10 years, what was the most used browser? Exactly. So they have the market for them. So they own the market. The browser was from Microsoft. They have the platform. They have everything on their site. But despite not having much things regarding JavaScript, there are the other things that were evolved behind. One of the things was JSON. Right? JSON was created by one of the major developers of Yahoo, and create this, JSON, this JavaScript-based data format. Also, was creating a protocol to communicate with the server, like when you make calls from the browser to the server. Also, there were a couple, you see Dojo, Toolkit framework. Besides Dojo, tons of frameworks were created at this time to build what they call it rich internet applications. And these frameworks, they're using JavaScript, but without any standardization. It was just they extend a bit some functionalities of JavaScript. Some of them are similar, some of them were not JavaScript at all, were Java. For instance, GWT, the toolkit of Google, was Java that compiles to JavaScript. We have more tools, CooksDo, XJS, IY. So there were a couple of frameworks that didn't use any standard. So there was no any standard common. They used JavaScript and extended JavaScript for different functionalities, but not standard at all, which means that every time that you need to learn a new framework, you need to learn almost a new language. You have Ajax as well that improved a lot asynchronously the request to the browser, the request to the servers. CoachDB, that was a database that store information in JSON format. jQuery, right, that really optimized the way or facilitate the way that you manipulate DOM. WebKit, that also allow or foster the development of the web for mobile. And one of the biggest changes, V8, that the engine that was created for Chrome that make as well JavaScript faster. And with V8, it's also possible to create Node.js that can run JavaScript not just in a browser, but also in the servers. So these new technologies allow us to come to the new reality. So we are back to the standards, not just because the contribution of the previous technologies, but because there was some change in the market. Internet Explorer were no longer the most used browser, right? So they lost a bit the monopoly of the web. And that changed as well the idea of probably is a game changing, right? So we are back to the standards, we're back to the open sources. We changed again. Open source was again a big thing. And with open source, you see a lot of contributions coming. But it was not just that. So the community that was the supporters of ECMAScript finally came to the agreement as well too. And it was possible to release a new version of ECMAScript, right? So this new version has JSON support. So JSON was invented before, right? And with this new version, we are capable as well to handle JSON. Aside this, new forms of manipulate arrays in JavaScript. But the next release was also even more impactful. I think this releases, the ECMAScript 6, brought a lot of new functionalities that make JavaScript really a mature thing that can be used for general purpose. Because as we said before, JavaScript was not just used in browsers for providing some interactivity, but will be used in the servers, will be used by a different purpose. So the language has to grow. So with that, there were things that changed, like the way that we use variables, more error functions. So it's a way to the language become more functional way. Classes as well too, that didn't exist in the time for the lovers of OP. Error functions as well too, though this is repeated. Okay, error functions is repeated, sorry. Classes, default parameters, destructing, maps. So there are a lot of more methods that allow to manipulate data and having classes that you can structure application better, especially when you are using this in the applications at a large scale. And after that, every year was launched a new version of the ECMAScript, right? This one is array as well with arrays. And along of these new versions as well, more things happening, more technologies come that start using JavaScript. So Cordova was one of the first platforms to allow development of cross platforms, and it was possible to writing native apps using JavaScript and HTML5 in this case. AngularJS that was released by Google, and after a couple of years, they released a new version fully written or in TypeScript. TypeScript is a superset of JavaScript that compiles into JavaScript, but is strongly typed, and you can catch errors in runtime. React, right? Probably you already know. Electron. Electron is quite important because it allows to building application that runs in desktop. Webpack, that was very popular because since the use of JavaScript were more used in large applications, so the complexity increases, we increase as well a lot of packages that exist, right? A lot of contributions. Webpack was really useful to handle the bundle of packages that you have. Babel, that also allow you to use new versions of the ECMAScript even when the browser doesn't support it because it transpiled it back. React Native, that use it as well, JavaScript for native apps. And GraphQL as well too, that was a very important thing because it allows that you can manipulate the language with APIs. You don't need to make so much calls. And you can use as well GraphQL to do this query, using JavaScript to make these queries. And there are no new concepts of web, right? So the way that we build our applications with web changed a bit. More component-based, virtual DOM, state management, progressive web apps, micro frontends. So these are new concepts that we have currently in these modern applications that also influence the way that JavaScript is evolving, right? And we are. So one of the things that the major introduction in ECMAScript 8 is async wait, because I remember to celebrate this a lot, because before this, so as you know, JavaScript is a single thread. So, and you want to make some asynchronous thing, before async wait, you need to make a callback, use callback functions. And if you need to do a lot of them, you have callback inside of callback inside of callback. We call it the callback hell, right? It's really hard to, especially in applications in large scale, to maintain or read this kind of code. But async wait makes the readable of the code much more simpler. And as you can see, there is a keep investing in the way that we manipulate data. So we have more methods the way you manipulate objects, you manipulate arrays, you manipulate maps. So yeah, and the following versions, I think we'll see this trend. Investment on asynchronous operations, because allows you to make applications more performant, because you can make asynchronous tasks at the same time. And as well the investment, the way that you manipulate data as well too, which is really important in these days. You see, so in the newest versions of the ECMAScript, like the 10, you also have new methods for manipulate arrays. So before was reduce and concat, now we have flat and flap map. So yeah, there is a trend of keeping investing the way that you manipulate arrays and try to make more functional, but as well more easily to do. Which is also important because we live in a day, in an era that big data and manipulate data is quite important. Yeah, as you can see, more investment in async operations. The last one is more to facilitate the way that we handle conditions instead of having this ifs, so we can have that more easily. Yeah, and if you see the new features that are coming, we see this trend about await things, so investment in asynchronous operations, investment in a way that you manipulate arrays or objects or maps, making an investment on functional programming. That's why we have this immutable array operations. And we have as well this hashtag that allows you to import and use scripts inside JavaScript. Yeah, so what's this expecting for JavaScript or for the future of the web? So WebAssembly is something as well that is there. TypeScript, so there is a high trend of start using TypeScript. That is a superset of JavaScript. Async wait, like I was saying, you see the trend of this investment, more functional programming, investment on array and map operations and objects. The way that also the modules is important. So the applications are becoming more complex and you need to have different modules and you need to manage them better. Progressive web apps, that is trying to have a native experience in a web application. Performance of improvements and of course AI. About WebAssembly, I think is one of the trends that is currently now. And why? Because WebAssembly allows you to compile code that is written in other languages that can be more faster, more efficient, like C++, for instance. Compile it and run it in JavaScript. So it compiles that language into JavaScript. That is quite useful if you want to run in a browser things like games, videos, things that demands a lot of interactivity and a lot of performance. Same as TypeScript, right? TypeScript is also, it's really increased, as you see the trend of the users of TypeScript is increasing a lot. It's really suitable for large applications because you can, it's static typing, right? And you can, in runtime, in compile time, you can find issues that we could not find with JavaScript, because just JavaScript runs in runtime, so you just find errors when you are actually running the browsers. But with TypeScript, not. Especially if you have integration with your IDE, it immediately finds errors quite easily. As well, the way that you manage modules is much easier rather than JavaScript. That's why it's better suitable for larger applications. Yeah, and the new era of web is coming, right? Probably you already heard about of these concepts. So the web probably is becoming more semantic, more intelligent, and more personalized. And there are technologies that will allow this, like blockchain will allow to, and big data and artificial intelligence, Internet of the Things will be there. Personalization will also always something that will appear in web. Using machine learning and AI, you can personalize your the content of your website, as well the interactions with the bots that can interact with you. And blockchain that will allow to create a more secure web and decentralized. And that's it. That is the reference that I use for this presentation. I hope that you like it.